back on Open Line, and we will bring back our guests Talia and Merna, because I want to kind of keep this conversation going about this workshop, which we are going to let folks know obviously how they can attend or get more information. But we're talking about these kids, and I think what's important is, you know, as we talked about this broken juvenile justice system, and you know, there's no one clear answer. I like the fact that you're talking about, and a lot of people don't think about this, is that a lot of these kids are dealing with trauma, whether it's, you know, violent crime in their neighborhoods, violent crime against a loved one or a friend, and they just, you know, are still young kids. They don't know how to process these emotions. They get angry, and then they make poor decisions. Not all, but, you know, they can make poor decisions. So how long is this workshop going to be Saturday?
Merna, is it 12 to 4? I mean, 1 to 4?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be like about 3 hours, like 1 to 4. And it'll give Merna and Taylor a chance to do activities with the kids. They'll have enough time to, you know, get everything together if they need to do one-on-ones or group settings. Okay,
and all ages of kids?
Absolutely. We're looking from like 5 to 19.
Okay, 5 to 19. How do people have to sign up if they want to go? How does it work?
No, if the address is on the flyer, we'll be at Hartman Park. If they want to show up, they're more than welcome.
Hartman Park Regional Community Center, and we'll put that, it's on Tucker Road. There it is, and we will put that information up again and talk about it a little later. But it is interesting that trauma is there. But Talia, I'll ask both of you, what do you think happens to these kids out on the streets? It almost seems like, and I hate to use this analogy, but we do so many stories about, you know, kids who are bright young kids who are either committing crimes or, like your son, Talia, are the victim, just the victim of a crime, and their life is taken from them. It's almost like the streets just eat these kids up. What happens to them? What changes? And they're young, so young too.
Absolutely. Well, for one, they may not have anywhere else to turn. And if they're dealing with trauma, you know, sometimes kids deal with trauma in school, bullying, they might not pick up as well in school. Now we've got COVID, and sometimes they don't have anywhere else to turn. And if you don't cater to kids that's going through traumas, you know, they don't know what to do, let alone anybody else know how to help them.
Right,
like I said, even when my kids went through what we went through with my son, I had to put everything aside to make sure my boys were okay.
Right.
And so when I would bring them to our events, I think that helped them to see things a lot different. But if I hadn't catered to that, I can't say, you know, how that anger would have ended up, because it's a lot of bottled up frustration.
Right.
And, you know, kids don't know where to turn to or how to release that in a positive manner.
Talia, I think you're hitting the nail right on the head. Sometimes we don't know the resources available to us. Sometimes we don't know that they are affordable and within reach. Absolutely. And it takes a step to just fill out an application and ask for help and be placed with a counselor or sit down and talk with someone at school. And it goes back to what you were asking about earlier, Rhori, with is it an open and inviting environment? Sometimes if kids perceive that the stigma is high, and sometimes it is, or see that the score is already high against them, sometimes that makes it really, really difficult to ask for help. And it becomes part of their inner dialogue, and it becomes part of their grief. The denial, the I can handle it on my own, or the I'm going to get back out there and I'll be the one to survive it. These are all stages. Yeah, that's right. These are all stages of grief.
Yeah.
They may look super obnoxious to us, and they may be blown out of proportion if they go on long enough without being recognized or without being sought help for, as Miss Talia did for her children. They can be out of control. The anger that may be healthy may become rage.
Yep.
Or if it's suppressed long enough, it may become resentment or depression. or several other things. So we want to catch these emotions and make sure that we titrate them, make sure that they are in their right form instead of showing up in really, really big ways in their lives.
You talk about, I'm sorry, you talk about catching these emotions, and Talia mentioned spotting kids who need help. How do we do that? You know, obviously, teachers in our public schools, we know they're overworked, they're underpaid, they've had to go through pandemic and change how they teach, and the kids have had, the pandemic obviously hasn't helped, but we can't rely on, you know, the teachers to, you know, it just adds more. I mean, they do their best, but you know, that system, that's just one slice of the pie, right?
Sure.
Absolutely. Hopefully, with this workshop, if it's a success, we want to make sure we do this workshop maybe every year. I mean, we've been trying to get in metro schools. We want to be in the center of metro schools to maybe help bridge that gap, to help catch some of this.
Right. Well, it's interesting you bring up the grief process. I'll share a personal story only because the anniversary was just this past weekend, and I was talking with my siblings about it. But I lost my mom 30 years ago. I was 25, and a tight-knit, you know, big family, 6 kids, and it was very sudden. She got sick and passed like within 5 or 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And I remember being 25, and I you know, thinking I was mature at the time, but I wasn't. And luckily, I had this support system around me with my family and my dad and my siblings, and you know. But I remember talking to someone about the stages of grief. I think there's a book out there that tell you about the stages of grief, and obviously these kids haven't learned about any of that. What I found was there's no one. There was, at least for me, there was no actual stage. One day I was feeling okay and grateful, and then the next day I was angry, and then the next day I was just crying all day, you know, and it would just come to me out of nowhere, just driving down the street and hear a song on the radio that reminded me, and it may be 2 months later, 6 months later, and I would just break down. And what I learned is pull over somewhere and let it out, take a few deep breaths and understand it's a process. But it was, you know, it was kind of all over the place, but luckily I was able to recognize it. And I'm sure these kids, Merna, you mentioned, you know, how quickly an angry kid can turn into, you know, that can turn into rage, and then this kid's making bad decisions.
Yeah, it's thank you, by the way, Rhori, for opening up and sharing about that.
Absolutely.
It's repression and suppression are, you know, the toughing it out process that you highlighted earlier.
Yeah.
That's what's common in our society, not just with men, not just with kids. It's, you know, it's the general message. We don't have time for your emotions. We don't have time for your feelings. So deal with it on your own and come back when you're ready. And as you highlighted, there is no, you know, I wish there was a formula that we can follow. Like 2 weeks of anger, 3 weeks of depression, and then you'll be fine and reach acceptance. But the truth of the matter is it can be a little bit scattered. It can be that, you know, hey, I reached acceptance, but just the topic of loss may bring up those emotions, and we can accept them and sit with them.
Right.
I was reading something earlier and it stuck with me. And it was one of Maya Angelou's poems. And the last line had said, I answered the heroic question, death, where is thy sting? With, it is here in my heart, in my mind, and memories.
Wow.
That's where grief lives. That's where sadness lives.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even the rage, even the bargaining that we see with, I can do it. I'll be the better person. I'll be the person to outlive this. That's where this is coming from, the hope to survive it, the hope to do better by it.
Talia, what was your, and it's still, I will admit, you know, it's a process. I still, you know, go through emotions. What was it like for you as the months and years went on, how you coped, and was it scattered also?
Absolutely. And I'm sorry to hear about your mom. I'm
Oh,
definitely
thank you.
glad you shared I'm definitely glad you shared your story. As you were talking, I felt every emotion
Yeah.
because that's just what it was. I can't say I'm like you. I can't say it's any stages. The very first thing you go through is denial.
Right.
For the very first few weeks, I could not sleep. I could hardly eat.
Yep.
I would pace my floor at night because the situation was unbearable,
Well,
and I
you're in a
couldn't
state of
believe.
shock.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe that it was happening. And so, now my heart is a little lighter. It's not as heavy, but it's still like a hole in your heart. It's something
yeah.
that, you will never truly get past, but you do learn to live. You do learn to live with it and cope with it. Thank God, I've got God in my life. I've had a great support system, family, friends, partners in the struggle. I've met a lot of great people in this process because I've done work with a few other organizations, which my main work is with Partners in the Struggle. But I am so grateful to Earl and his wife because they have been a godsend to us.
Sure.
And so,
and
through that
also,
process,
I hope you know that how you're honoring his memory by doing the work that you're doing. It's an amazing thing, and I know that's probably therapeutic for you too.
Absolutely, thank you so much. And I was not going to let my son's name die. His body is gone, but his spirit will always be here.
I love that. All right, we have a phone call. Let's get to. Oh, did our phone call drop off? Well, I think it was Jay who called in. If you want to call back, I apologize for leaving you on hold. But if you'd like to call back, we'll put you on. So. Tell us a little more about how many. Do you know how many you're expecting? And parents are invited too, obviously.
Absolutely. I'm not sure exactly how many we're expecting right now. I know personally, I've got some kids that that I've invited, and I know they're coming. I've got family members that's lost a parent. I've got a couple of family members that's lost uncles and aunts and different things of that nature. So I know I've got quite a few family members that are participating.
Right. All right. I wanted to ask you, Talia, also. This was back in September. I know you were advocating for everyone to take an anti-gun violence pledge, and just the concern that you have for these kids getting a hold of guns and obviously the very terrible things that happen. I want to read. Here it is. This is the oath that is written here. I swear I won't touch or pick up a gun. I swear I won't take a gun to school, around friends and friends who have or are playing with guns. I swear not to hang out. That's basically the gist of it, right?
Right. Right. We created, Earl created this I pledge a few years back. And what we were pledging to our children, especially in schools, that they would not deal with the gun. Right now, you have kids dealing with guns. They're not trained. They have no abilities to deal with the gun, and they shouldn't. You have to be a certain age to even carry a gun. So we're not for or against guns. We just want to make it safe and very safe for our children.
And I want to point out, too, we've been talking about marginalized communities and these kids, but, to be fair, this happens everywhere, in every socioeconomic race, religion. We know that if there's a young person who gets a hold of a gun, who is not trained, and it's out on the streets, that bad things happen, whether it's urban areas or rural areas, right?
Absolutely. No, and this is what people need to realize: gun violence does not. It doesn't care who you are.
Right.
Age, color, gender, religion. It does not care. Anybody can be affected by it. And people need to understand it. And this is the reason why we do so much work in the community. This is for everybody.
Yeah.
We don't care what community that it is.
Right. All right. On that note, we will take another break and talk some more right after this. Stay with us.